A 20-pound Maine Coon that Carol agreed to take in temporarily has been making the same rounds every single night at midnight for 14 months. She slept through all of it. Then she set up a camera. What it showed her, every night without exception, left her completely speechless, and it explained something she hadn't been able to fix for 4 years. Carol had been a light sleeper her entire adult life. The kind of person who woke up at a car door closing 2 streets over, who kept a glass of water on the nightstand and a paperback she had been reading for 4 months because she never stayed asleep long enough to finish a chapter. Her doctor had suggested melatonin. Her sister had suggested warm milk. Her coworker had suggested a weighted blanket. Her neighbor had suggested white noise. She had tried all of it. None of it had worked. What worked in the end was a 20-pound Maine Coon named Theodore. Theodore came into Carol's life the way most unexpected things do, sideways and without warning. Her neighbor, Margaret, had found him as a stray on the side of a road in November, thin and matted and deeply unimpressed with the situation, and had kept him for 3 weeks before her landlord discovered him and issued an ultimatum. Carol had agreed to take him temporarily. That was 14 months ago. Theodore had apparently not been informed of the temporary arrangement and had made no moves to honor it. He was enormous from the start, even underweight. Gray and brown tabby with eyes that were green on one side and blue-green on the other, as if he had been assembled from 2 separate cats and the colors hadn't quite matched up. The vet estimated him at 4 years old and confirmed he was a Maine Coon, which explained the size, the fur, and what the vet diplomatically called a strong sense of personal authority. Carol set up a bed for him in the living room. By the 3rd night, it was empty. She found him at the foot of her bed, curled into a shape that took up considerably more space than his size should have allowed. She moved him back to the living room. He waited 11 minutes and returned. She moved him again. He waited 8 minutes. She moved him a 3rd time, and he sat on the floor next to the bed and stared at her in the dark with complete patience until she fell asleep out of sheer exhaustion. She stopped moving him after that. The house had felt large and quiet in the way houses do when you live alone, and have learned to stop noticing it. Theodore filled it differently than a person would have, not loudly, just completely. The way something settles into a space and makes it feel less like a place you return to and more like a place you belong in. Within 2 weeks, a pattern emerged that Carol noticed but didn't think much about at first. Every night, sometime around midnight, Theodore would get up from his spot at the foot of the bed, walk the full length of the mattress, and press himself against Carol's back. Not aggressively, not heavily, just firmly enough to be felt. He would stay there for approximately 20 minutes, then walk back to the foot of the bed and settle again. She assumed it was warmth-seeking behavior. Cats like warm spots. She was a warm spot. She told herself it was simple. She was not thinking clearly enough about the timing. Her neighbor, Linda, who had owned cats for 30 years, came over for coffee one Saturday, and Carol mentioned it. Linda put down her mug and said, "Every night at the same time?" Carol said, "Roughly midnight, yes." Linda said, "And you sleep through it?" Carol said, "That is the strange part. I do. I always do." Linda looked at her. Carol looked back. Neither of them said what they were both thinking. If you're still watching and haven't subscribed yet, that honestly stings a little. Hit subscribe now. You'll want to hear what happened next. Carol had been sleeping through the night for 6 weeks before she consciously noticed it. She had not taken melatonin in a month. The paperback on the nightstand had been finished and replaced with a new one. She was waking up at 6:30 feeling like she had actually rested, which had not happened reliably in 4 years. She mentioned it to her doctor at a routine appointment. Her doctor asked what had changed. Carol thought about it and said, "I think it might be the cat." She set up a small camera on the dresser on a Thursday night, pointed at the bed. She watched the footage the next morning over her first cup of coffee, still in her robe, not yet fully awake. 12:04 a.m. Theodore lifted his head from the foot of the bed, looked at Carol, then stood, stretched deliberately, and walked the length of the mattress with the unhurried confidence of someone who had a scheduled appointment. He pressed himself against her back, his chin resting on her shoulder. His eyes were open. He was not sleeping. He was watching the room. the door, the window, back to the door. 23 minutes of quiet, unblinking attention before he walked back to the foot of the bed, turned twice, and lay down, like a guard changing shifts. Carol set down her coffee. She watched it again, then a third time. Then she pulled up the previous night, 12:02 a.m. Same walk, same position, same 20-something minutes. The night before that, 12:07 a.m. She went back 2 weeks as far as the camera would allow, every single night, never more than 8 minutes from midnight in either direction, always the same deliberate walk, always the same position, always watching the room until he was satisfied, then returning to his spot. He had been doing this since the second week she had him. She had slept through all of it, every single time, without knowing why. She called Linda and described what she had seen. Linda was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "Carol, he is keeping watch." Carol said, "He is a cat." Linda said, "He is a Maine Coon. There is a difference." Carol started to say something and then didn't. She looked at the footage one more time instead, at Theodore's eyes, open and steady and completely awake at 12:04 in the morning while she slept. Carol looked at Theodore. Theodore was sitting on the kitchen windowsill, looking at the yard with the focused attention of someone monitoring a situation that required monitoring. He did not look like a cat who had wandered in from the cold 14 months ago with no particular plan. He looked like someone who had assessed the household, found certain things lacking, and quietly taken charge of the ones he could fix, without asking, without waiting to be thanked. She had not slept reliably in 4 years. Then a 20-pound stray showed up, decided midnight rounds were part of the arrangement, and fixed it without being asked and without ever mentioning it. Theodore is 5 years old now, or somewhere close to it. He weighs 20 pounds and has never once used the bed Carol bought for the living room. He still makes his midnight rounds without fail, every single night. The same route, the same timing. Carol no longer sets the camera. She knows what it would show. Some nights, she wakes up just enough to feel the familiar weight settle against her back. She doesn't open her eyes. She just feels him there, steady and warm and completely certain, doing what he decided was his job on the third night in a house he was only supposed to stay in temporarily. She never did find out where he came from before Margaret found him on that road in November. She has stopped wondering. It doesn't seem to matter anymore. Some arrivals don't need an explanation. They just need a door left open. He is exactly where he decided to be. And so, finally, is she. Would you have kept him, or would you have found him another home? Tell me in the comments.